Good morning, and thank you again for being with us. We're going to get started this hour with Hunter Biden and his guilty plea to all the charges in his federal tax case. The plea came just shortly before jury selection in the trial was set to get underway. Hunter was facing 9 criminal counts over allegations that he engaged in a 4-year scheme to get out of paying at least $1.4 million in taxes. The decision, Hunter Biden says, was made in an effort to spare his family any further pain. NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett has the details.
Hey there. The president's son showed up to court hoping to maintain his innocence through a rare conditional plea. But once it became clear that was a non-starter, he had to go all the way. A guilty plea with no more, no deal, no bargain. Now at the mercy of only the judge.
This morning, a new chapter for Hunter Biden, pleading guilty to federal tax charges now, the last-minute effort to avoid a potentially devastating trial coming on the first day of jury selection in Los Angeles, where the president's son faced 9 counts, 3 felonies and 6 misdemeanors, including tax evasion, filing false tax returns, and failing to pay his taxes on time. In a statement, Hunter Biden saying in part, "I will not subject my family to more pain, more invasions of privacy, and needless embarrassment. Like millions of Americans, I failed to file and pay my taxes on time. For that, I am responsible." His attorney, Mark Geragos, saying he was prepared to go to trial, but recent rulings from the judge would have led to putting more of Hunter's troubled past on display.
Was he conflicted about it?
I think anybody would be conflicted about it. There's an old expression, you can beat the rap, but not the ride. And I think that perfectly encapsulates what happened here.
The last ride, a rough one, as Hunter Biden was convicted of federal gun charges in Delaware in June. His past drug abuse playing a large part in that case, and this one too, as prosecutors accused him here of using his famous name to bankroll his drug addiction and lavish spending. His ultimate sentence in California and in Delaware soon in the hands of the court, unless he's pardoned, something President Biden has said he would not do. Now, with Vice President Harris atop the ticket, the White House says,
well, you've heard President Biden make the commitment that that wouldn't happen. I wouldn't imagine that changing with Vice President Harris.
As for what happens next now, Hunter Biden is set to be sentenced in Delaware in November, just after the election, and then a month later in California. Back to you.
All right, Laura, thank you so much. Well, this morning, the 14-year-old suspect facing murder charges for his role in a Georgia high school shooting on Wednesday is expected to make his first court appearance. Charges were also brought against the suspect's father last night, including second-degree murder, alleging that he knowingly allowed his son to possess a weapon. NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar is in Winder, Georgia, with the latest.
That's right, Savannah. 14-year-old Colt Gray is expected to appear in court later this morning. He is being tried as an adult and is facing 4 felony counts of murder for each of those victims. And in a surprise twist overnight, his father now being arrested, and now he's facing charges of his own.
This morning, new charges against the father of the accused shooter in Georgia, as 14-year-old Colt Gray is expected to be arraigned after the deadly morning that left 4 people dead, including 2 students and 2 teachers. And overnight, his 54-year-old father, Colin Gray, was charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children.
These charges stem from Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son, Colt, to possess a weapon.
2 law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation telling NBC News the father gave his son an AR-15 style rifle as a gift after they were interviewed by authorities last year following an online thread. The same type of weapon was used in the mass shooting. According to an investigator's incident report following that interview last year, Colin Gray told authorities that his son was allowed to use his father's hunting rifles when supervised, but, quote, does not have unfettered access. Investigators this morning are still searching for a motive, indicating Gray was a brand new student to the district. Wednesday, just his 2nd day at the high school. Barrow County Sheriff Judd Smith crediting a new safety app, which was implemented at the school just last week, with the quick response from police and with saving lives.
The teachers each have an ID with their picture on it, and they have a button on that ID, and they press it so many times, and it alerts us where that incident is occurring. We prevented more deaths interacting with the suspect within minutes.
This morning, we're also learning of heroic acts by math teacher and football coach Richard Aspinwall. Witnesses say he died protecting his students.
If he wouldn't have gone out there and checked and seen what the commotion was, who knows if that kid would have been able to come into a second classroom. So he is by far a hero.
And guys, back to the arrest of the alleged shooter's father. This isn't the first time that prosecutors have tried to hold parents responsible for the actions of their children in these mass school shootings. You guys may remember James and Jennifer Crumbly from earlier this year. They were each sentenced to 10 years for their role in their son Ethan Crumbly's mass shooting of a Michigan school back in 2021 that left 4 students dead. Savannah?
Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas with more on this, and pardon a studio noise that we are dealing with here. Danny, good morning. Thank you for being back with us this hour. There's a lot to unpack here. Let's start on Colin Gray, the father of Colt Gray. So he's the first parent of an accused school shooter to be charged specifically with murder.
Yes.
But our viewers may remember this comes months after Ethan Crumbly's parents. This was a shooter in Michigan, that Oxford high school shooting. They were both convicted of involuntary manslaughter. So I guess first, just what's different about this case where there are murder charges rather than involuntary manslaughter alone? And how do you see this going? Is this a trend where we see parents being held responsible for actions of their children?
Your second question is spot on. We are living in a sea change moment in American legal history, because for all of American history, we did not hold parents criminally responsible for the crimes of their children unless they participated in the crime. That essentially changed in the last year when the parents of Ethan Crumbly were charged with crimes connected to the shooting perpetrated by their son. And that was a crime that the jury accepted and they convicted. Is it precedential in the sense that it forces a change on the country? No, it is one single court's verdict, one jury's verdict. But it really reflects an American change in thought that school shootings are so bad that we are now ready and prepared to hold parents responsible if they are reckless in providing a firearm to their children. So, and this is murder charged not necessarily as an intentional murder, but possibly in the category of reckless murder, which is another category of murder. In other words, you may not intend the murder, but there is a variety of murder, a kind of murder in which if your actions are so depraved, so reckless, so indifferent to human life, then you can still be charged with murder.
Okay. What do you think here in terms of the likelihood of a conviction? I mean, obviously a horrific crime. 4 people lost their lives. This is also, though, unfolding in Georgia, a state with pretty loose gun laws, a pro-gun population. What do you think the chances are here?
So I may be in the minority here, but I actually think if I'm a prosecutor, I do want a jury drawn from a community that has a lot of lawful firearm owners. Because, and for most of my life, I lived in a community like this, a lot of firearm owners, not myself, never owned one. But what I find is you might get a lot of firearm owners who are very intolerant of negligent behavior when it comes to firearm ownership. Of course, if I'm the prosecutor, maybe I do want someone from a community where there aren't a lot of guns and where there aren't a lot of gun owners. Maybe they would be equally as offended at what the defendant did. But I don't necessarily think this is a bad jury pool if you're in a rural environment or a rural jurisdiction where you have a large incident of lawful gun owners. They may be really harsh on this kind of behavior.
I think you hear details like just generally if there was this access to a gun, if a gun, an assault style rifle was gifted, and then of course this point about was that gifted after there was that questioning of were you making threats of a school shooting. What do you make of that from a legal perspective? How does that shape up as an argument?
I'm glad you brought that up because there's been a lot of discussion about what states have rules about securing firearms and allowing children access to them. And I don't know that that really matters that much. What we've seen, for example, in the Crumbly case, is that prosecutors use a simple theory of recklessness that can apply to anything. There's a danger, there's a risk. Did you consciously disregard it? Were you aware of it? And being aware of it, did you allow the substantial risk to continue? This is basic recklessness. It is the minimum standard that we hold people criminally responsible for. So you simply apply traditional criminal principles of intent, knowledge, and you can hold a parent liable for their reckless behavior in allowing their child to have access to a firearm and use that firearm if they know that that child is struggling with mental health issues, and they know that that child poses a threat. It is always a challenge to prove that the threat was real enough, but we've seen from the Crumbly case that it is doable. And now that that seal has been broken, we may see a major change in American jurisprudence. We are here really, I believe, at the beginning of a huge shift in the way we think about parental accountability.
Absolutely. What do you make of a 14-year-old being tried as an adult? Does that complicate things? How do you see that playing out?
Not at all. It happens all the time. It's usually called transfer, depending on the jurisdiction. I've had clients who were juveniles who were transferred to adult court. We have an interesting way of looking at juveniles in the United States. We think of them under a certain age, and that age varies from state to state. Under a certain age, they're not criminally responsible. But if they do something especially bad, we will charge them as adults, even if we don't ordinarily think they're responsible. It's a bit of a paradox, but it makes sense. If somebody does something really, really bad, then they belong in adult court. At least that's what we've said as a society and as a country. We have a juvenile system under a certain age. There's no, I guess it's a neurological question, whether or not juveniles have responsibility for what they do. We'll treat them differently. But after they reach majority age, they're adults, or if they do something awful, then we will make the moves to try them as an adult.
Danny Ceballos, thank you very much covering everything for us this morning. We appreciate you being here with us. Well, Wednesday's shooting in Georgia is reigniting a nationwide debate about whether students should be able to have their cell phones in class. NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis spoke to the head of the National Parents Union. They say many parents believe it's a crucial safety measure.
When shots rang out in Winder, Georgia, Area Bowling called her mother Tabitha from inside the school.
It's scary, and I'm thankful that she did have her phone so that I could know that she was in this situation.
Increasingly, schools nationwide are putting limits on kids' cell phones. The tragic school shooting has a lot of parents concerned about staying in touch. Carrie Rodriguez is president of the National Parents Union. What are you hearing from parents?
Deep frustration, deep fear, deep anxiety that they're not going to know what's happening with their child if an emergency arises. And frankly, if a child needs to reach out to a parent for help and support, they should be able to do so.
2,100 middle school students in Marietta, Georgia, have been locking their cell phones in pouches since last spring.
Where we wanted students to be focused and present and free from distractions in class.
Superintendent Dr. Grant Rivera says the decision came after extensive discussions with parents, teachers, and law enforcement about what to do in an emergency.
One of the dynamics they've shared with us is that we don't want students being distracted by cell phones while they are listening to the directives and commands of adults who've been trained on how to respond.
Dr. Rivera says, unlike some other schools, in Marietta, every classroom has a device to quickly unlock the pouches in the event of an emergency and when it's safe to do so. Parents and schools trying to strike a delicate balance between learning, safety, and being connected. Rahima Ellis, NBC News.
Well, this week's shooting in Georgia was the big topic on the campaign trail yesterday. This as we're now 4 days until the presidential debate between Vice President Harris and former President Trump. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us with the latest from the trail. Peter, good morning.
Savannah, good morning to you. You were talking about how this has now reignited the debate over whether you should have cell phones in school. It's also reigniting that debate over gun violence in this country, where these competing candidates have very different views about how to respond to the crisis. Mr. Trump's running mate calling for new actions to fortify schools. Meanwhile, the Harris campaign is pushing for tougher restrictions broadly, including efforts to keep guns out of the hands of criminals.
A political war of words breaking out overnight after Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance weighed in on the Georgia school shooting.
The Kamala Harris answer to this is to take law-abiding American citizens' guns away from them. Clearly, strict gun laws is not the thing that is going to solve this problem. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools.
Vice President Harris focusing on the fact of life comment, writing, "School shootings are not just a fact of life. It doesn't have to be this way." Vance responding, "Instead of addressing her own failures, she lies about what I said." Harris's running mate Tim Walz also on the attack, calling the Vance comments pathetic and campaigning in the key swing state of Pennsylvania.
I think it's a brilliant quote by your great governor, Josh Shapiro. And I hear him say this. Whenever Donald Trump's talking about America, he's talking America.
While both presidential candidates are focusing on the economy this week, Mr. Trump promising to establish a government efficiency commission that would audit the federal government to cut waste, an idea floated to him by controversial tech billionaire and Trump supporter Elon Musk.
And Elon, because he's not very busy, has agreed to head that task force.
Musk writing, I look forward to serving America if the opportunity arises, though any official role in a Trump administration would likely raise conflicts of interest because Musk owns companies that have major contracts with the government. Among Mr. Trump's other economic plans, higher tariffs on imports and eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits and tips, a proposal recently embraced by Harris.
She is actually copying a lot of my plan. In fact, we're going to send her a MAGA cap sometime in the next week.
So about Mr. Trump's plan to increase tariffs on imports, Harris has slammed that as what she calls a Trump tax that would cost American consumers. Mr. Trump notably yesterday also warned that a Harris presidency would lead this country into what he called a 1929 depression. But you'll remember he said the same thing during the last campaign against Joe Biden. Of course, a prediction that proved wrong. Savannah.
All right, Peter, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.